In this house, actually there were 5 different kinds of heat. People had tried and tried to heat it. There was electrical baseboard heating, there was a gas stove here, there was a gas stove in the back, there's a fireplace, and then there's radiant ceiling heat in the back addition. And apparently none of it worked very well. They didn't use this room, the people who had this house before we did, they didn't use this room because it was so cold, which is too bad because it's a nice room. But when we moved in December, and they had these jalousie windows here, and the wind just whipped through there, and it was cold, and we had to do something. So basically we just ran the gas fire all the time, going, oh please. So anyway, we had a lot of different kinds of heat in here. We had moved here from Washington in the Tri-Cities, and in the Tri-Cities we had had a heat pump, a very efficient heat pump. And so moving here and being hit with the cost for the baseboard heating and also for the gas heating was just, it actually doubled the expenses that we had had on heating. So it was quite a surprise. That was also another, aside from, we were being cold and running out of money, it's like, no, it's a bad thing, you know. So, well, the first one we got was in November of 2008, about a year after we moved in here, because the winter was coming on and we knew we had to do something. We had already replaced the windows, but that wasn't enough. And so we got one. It was effective for this end of the house, but because there's an addition there and there's a very narrow hallway leading from one place to the other, it actually didn't work very well in the back room, and so or rooms actually. And so we got another one installed the next year, also in November. When we put in the heat pumps, well, I've calculated it out because I track all of this stuff on with Quicken, and after the first heat pump went in, our utility costs dropped by about $10 a month. But one of the things that was happening, because it was new and I wasn't sure that it was going to work, and so I left the pilot light on in the gas stove in the back, and that is actually fairly expensive if you just run that stove all the time. Then when we put the second one in, let me see, then the costs dropped. I'm not exactly sure how much, but it dropped like about $6 or $7 a month, something like that. That's on the average though, because when it got very, very cold, and when the temperature drops like into the 20s outside, then these are not really they're really not that effective. So we needed the backup, and we used the gas stoves as a backup. So that added some costs. And then one of the things that we hadn't had before was air conditioning in the summertime. And so we have had air conditioning costs now in the summertime, and that's also increased the monthly cost for the energy. Prior to that, you just sweat through the hot days and open the windows at night and cool off the house and do that whole thing. So, but generally speaking, the cost has dropped by about $10 to $15 a month. It's dropped by about 10% actually overall. The work was done very quickly. I have to say though, there was a problem when we first installed the first one, because we had a huge ice storm come through here, and it knocked everything out all around for like 4 or 5 days. And so the electrician was off doing emergency stuff, and I mean, we had gas heat, but there were people who had nothing, and it was really cold. So you kind of got to go with that, So there was a little bobble there, but the second time through it was very good, very good. They just came in, ta-dum, 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 and it was done. So very pleased with that. Very pleased. Yes, we did get an energy rebate, and which was very welcome. And also there was a tax credit on the federal income taxes. Actually, there was also one for the state of Oregon, which wasn't very large, but nevertheless, every little bit helps. And I have to say that for the tax credit, we maxed out on it, and so we didn't get the full amount. But that's tax time coming around, you're going to cry anyway. So there you go. Well, in this house, it is particularly important. This is a house this part was built in 1968. That part, the second part, was built in 1978. It's a slab foundation, which means that what is there, and you are not going to go anywhere else without actually digging through it. So there's not going to be any ducts in this house. The ceiling is a textile roof, which means that you have what are these, 2x6s on top of rafters, and then on top of that is a small amount of insulation, and then there's just fabric covering on it. There's no room for ducts there either. And so this is pretty much it. It's what we were saying before, that the house itself is actually the duct now. And I guess that really does make a difference if you've got a house that like one of those old farmhouses that's been added on to, and so on and so forth. I wouldn't think that this would be a very good solution, because the warm air just doesn't turn corners very well. It runs into obstructions and it just kind of stops. So there you would need ducting. Although interestingly enough, when we were in actually both in Venice and in Florence this spring, we saw a lot of these ductless heat pumps all over the country, on private houses and private buildings, public buildings. You could tell because they have the exterior heat exchangers. And in our rooms, in our hotel rooms, there was always something like this, which you could adjust for, well, in Venice, not for cooling, because it was still too expensive to operate there, but they're very, very close with their money in Venice. But in Florence, where it was warmer, actually, they did have them turned on, and you could use them for air conditioning. So they apparently managed to do that, and they have, they're not even, golly, those buildings are made out of brick and stone, and there's no way that you can punch ducts through anything like that. So I guess that's their easiest solution there. But for a house like this, it turns out to be a good solution. We have open spaces, and this one can serve this whole area. The back one can serve the rear area very well, actually. So we're pretty satisfied with it. Well, it has its own fan, which drives the air, and it's also got louvers on it, which allows you to direct the air in different directions. And so instead of having a duct that runs over to this one point and then forces air from there into these various areas, you're depending on that one fan and the vents or the louvers to actually direct the air. And it works fairly well, although I do have to say that you have to learn how to use it, and there's a learning curve. It takes about a year at least to understand what you're doing with these things. In this particular, this floor right here is sunken. It rises up about 18 inches over there, and that's enough to make a really distinct temperature difference. If you're sitting here, you can be cold and be sweating over there in the kitchen. And so what you have to do is figure out how to set these vents, and also set the fan and the swinging, I forget what it's called. Yeah, to cover this area in order to be able to stir up that air and keep yourself from actually freezing down here on the floor. But once you do that, then you can actually be very, very comfortable. I was really, really pleased. So.